financial argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Now, we are continually seeing the deterioration of the economy, and we're starting to realize when we look at the entire private Western Central Bank as a whole, the entire system is imploding. And we can see from different countries where things are really starting to decline rapidly. And we can also see that it's not the people in each of these countries that are boosting the economy, boosting real estate, retail. We see that it's coming from the outside or from the central bank. And what I mean by the outside, I mean foreign investors trying to park their cash and hide it. And we can see right now in Canada, in the Vancouver area, that foreign investors, well, they're disappearing from Vancouver because the government imposed a 15% surcharge to try to curb the home prices from increasing and surging so quickly. And what we're seeing is, since they've done this, foreign investors said, okay, this is not a place for me to park my cash. We're going to leave. And we are seeing a 96% plunge from about 7 weeks prior. So from this, what are we getting? We're getting that foreign investors were responsible for 16.5% of the purchases in Vancouver, driving the prices up. And what we're seeing right now is this is just one piece of the puzzle, because the other pieces are hedge funds, investment companies, and we're starting to see a breakdown of this. And when we look in the United States, and not just the United States, but other countries, we're starting to see that home prices, well, they're starting to decline. Remember, the everyday person who got wiped out in 2008 never really recovered. They had this nice full-time job. They had to get a part-time job. We know there's hundreds of millions of people that are out of work throughout Europe. We know there's hundreds and hundreds of million people that don't have work, and many people just have part-time jobs. So they're not really driving the real estate industry. This is why the central banks can't control the entire country. All they can do is control different aspects of the country in different cities, where they can say, okay, look, San Francisco, hey, New York, look, and they can point this to these different areas. But when we go outside of those controlled areas, we see that real estate is not doing well. I'm seeing more and more homes on the market for longer and longer periods of time. They're continually lowering their prices. And we're getting into a situation where this entire system, it will not be able to be sustained by the central bank. Because, yes, they might have 10, 15, 20 cities, but what about the rest? The rest is crashing around them. And we can see right now the situation, it's not getting better. It's getting worse. We understand that the United States has been putting pressure on Saudi Arabia to produce more and more oil, to pump it out, to put a lot of pressure on Russia, to help with the situation inside the U.S. Because remember, lower oil prices helps the transportation industry, helps production, helps to move goods from point A to point B, lowers the costs. They don't have to lower the cost to you, but what they do is it lowers the cost and makes them a little bit more profitable, or just enough to stay alive. They were hoping that this would help with the spending, where people would go out and say, hey, look, I have a lot of extra money. I'm going to go out and spend the money. But this didn't happen. And we can see we're getting into a situation where there's a huge problem, especially in Saudi Arabia, because with these low oil prices, it is really hurting their economy. And we can see right now out in Saudi Arabia that construction workers, well, companies are suffering. They're drying up because government funding is drying up. And we see that Saudi Arabia needs to do something completely different. So they're looking to cut production by 500,000 barrels. We see fellow OPEC member Algeria wants the group to cut its collective output by 1 million barrels a day. And again, is this going to happen? Not if the United States has its say, because They are setting the rules. They are telling them what they want. And we'll have to watch this situation because we can see right now that so far, every time they try to cut production, it has not worked. And it is another reason why they are producing so much oil. Think about this for a second. Let's go back to 1971 when we came off the gold standard and when there was, I'm putting up air quotes here, shortage of oil, which we know there wasn't. Well, when this system dies today, there's going to be a problem getting oil. And we can see right now the glut of oil is to help this situation because they realize what's about to happen. Now, is it going to help the everyday person? Most likely not. It's going to help governments. It's going to help the elite. And there's another reason, because when we move into war, they need oil. They know it most likely will be a very difficult time to get this oil. So we see this huge glut of oil, and this is being stored everywhere. Now, we talk a lot about Obamacare, and it is a complete disaster. It is in a death spiral. I mean, most of the original 23 co-ops, well, they've completely failed. And they have dumped more than 800,000 members back onto the markets over the last 2 years. And we can see that Obamacare will likely falter as the remaining co-ops are deep in the red. I mean, we're looking at New Mexico Health Connections having problems. Montana Health Cooperative, problems. Evergreen Health Cooperative, problems. And there are many more. They're all doing terribly. So we need to think about this. Was this planned? I mean, it has to make you wonder. Was this planned all along for the Affordable Care Act to create maybe a semi-public healthcare system that was so expensive and so dysfunctional that the American people would eventually come to despise it and say, listen, we want something else? Maybe a fully socialized healthcare system? Was this always the plan? It's starting to look like that. It's starting to look, this is exactly what they wanted to do. Because you have to remember what our U.S. government central bankers want. They want everyone dependent on the government. This way, they can control the people. We see that the U.S. government central bankers, they are still pushing the agenda out in Charlotte. We know 70% of the people who are there protesting, they're from the outside. They brought in agent provocateurs to create chaos in the region. This is exactly what they want. Now, of course, the police released their video, their body cam video footage, but it really doesn't show anything. It doesn't show that he has a weapon. It shows that the police just opened fire on this individual. We also had another shooting at the Washington Mall. First they said it was a Hispanic man. Then all of a sudden we find out it was not. We find out that this person was from Turkey. And we can see right now this person was caught. He was 20 years old. And he went in, I believe he killed 4 women, 1 man. And when they apprehended him, he was like in a zombie-like type of state. He was unarmed. The question was he on SSRIs? Was there another shooter? What else was going on in this entire situation? Because it's starting to fit the same exact pattern. And if we look at the drug aspect of it, it looks like 99% of these individuals who do these type of crimes, it seems like they're patsies. They were on medication. They were set up by the FBI. And then most of the time, they end up being shot or they kill themselves. This time, this person escaped. So it might not have been a planned thing through the FBI. Maybe he was just on medication. Maybe it was an argument with a girlfriend. But we will need to wait and see. But the whole point of this is that the corporate media is continually playing this up. They're continually pushing this agenda. Now, this could be used for gun control. They can use it for anything. So they pick out one instance of something going on. They blow it up. They keep it on the corporate media, like in Charlotte, like in Washington. And so far, what we've seen so far is bombings in New York and New Jersey, a race riot in Charlotte being ginned up by the Soros organization. We see another shooting in Washington, and we're starting to see they're trying to build this chaos scenario. And we'll have to watch it because I believe this is going to accelerate, and they're going to have more of these stage events in October. We see the U.S., they're going to be deploying new nukes in Europe, and NATO members are continuing to expand their anti-missile capability in Europe. And we can see that they're doing this under the so-called phased adaptive approach. And the U.S., they're planning to place nuclear bombs with increased accuracy in Europe. Now, of course, Russia's looking at this saying, okay, we have nuclear weapons pointing right at us at our doorstep. And we can see that this is all in the approach of creating the instance of a first strike in Russia. Yes, they're saying, oh, it's going to be a missile shield, it's going to protect Europe. But really, you can see right now how they're setting this up to create the first strike scenario. We see U.S. troops, they've been using white phosphorus in Iraq to obscure Kurdish forces. And once again, we know that this is banned by the world. You cannot use it on civilians, but there's evidence coming out there that, yes, the United States has dropped this on civilians. And this is a huge concern. Out in Syria, we see the United States, they just don't have 2 bases. Actually, they have 7 bases in northern Syria. And they've placed them in Kobane, Hasaka, and many other regions. And we can see right now that this is in preparation to create a safe zone in this area, because it looks like all the bases are from Aleppo east. And it looks like they're getting ready to create that entire safe zone. And it's north of Aleppo on the border of Turkey. And we can see that U.S. forces, well, in the northern province of Hasaka, they have their new operations room. They built helipads there. In Mabruka, we can see there's 45 U.S. Special Forces. They've been deployed there. We see Ain Issa. There's a base in that area. There's 100 U.S. forces. Kobane, 300 U.S. Special Forces have been deployed there. And we are seeing the United States setting up these bases, raising the flag, and there's more and more troops being deployed in this area. Remember, this is going to be used as a forward launching area to go into Damascus and remove Assad. And they're using these ceasefires, these peace deals, as a stall tactic. So they have time to build all of this. And they are building it up very, very quickly. We see Obama. Well, he has vetoed the 9/11 bill. And we can see right now that if supporters gather a 2/3 majority in both the Senate and the House, they could override Obama's veto. And it looks like, and this is coming from the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, saying that he believes that this can be done and this will be overridden. Now, what happens if this is overridden? Well, there's a bigger problem. Because the Saudis already said that they're going to be selling U.S. assets, getting rid of their treasury bonds if this happens. And this is why Obama vetoed the bill right now. Because he knew that this would destroy the U.S. Because all Saudi Arabia has to really do is sell its assets and its treasuries. It did not have to bring down the World Trade Center to do anything, to do or destroy the United States. They could have destroyed it with the snap of a finger by selling their treasuries and assets. But we can see this has all been set up right now. Because if the House and the Senate push this through, the central bank, the U.S. government, who can they blame? The people. They can say the people wanted this. They destroyed the economy of the United States. It's a setup. Because once this happens, the system will collapse. Actually, they made a movie about this called Rollover, and that was out in 1981, where the Saudis sold their assets, the treasury bonds, and the system imploded. And it didn't take long. So from the very beginning of these 28 pages, this was a setup from the beginning. Because remember, the central bank does not want to take blame for what is about to happen. Obama doesn't want to take blame for what is about to happen. So this way, when the people, the Senate, the House, decide to override Obama, they're going to turn around and they're going to say, because you did this, the Saudis now are selling their assets. They're not even going to blame it on the Saudis. And we can see right now, this is the approach they are taking. And once this goes through, this is another indicator that the entire system is about to implode. So at this point, we watch this very carefully. If the Senate and the House push this through, we will see a collapse coming very shortly. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.